Have you ever met someone and thought, why do they think like that? Or maybe you've been in a meeting trying to explain something that makes perfect sense to you, but it's just not clicking with the other person. Sometimes I used to joke, I wish I could just clone myself because life would be so much easier if everyone worked, communicated, or processed things the way I do. But of course, the world doesn't work that way, and it's not supposed to. What if instead of trying to change people, we learned to see them differently? What if we could understand someone's behavior through colors? Literally, colors. That is what the book Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erikson explores. And it completely changed how I view people. Just a quick disclaimer, this video is not sponsored and I won't be summarizing the entire book. I just want to share my takeaways, what stuck with me, and how it helped me work better with people in business, at home, and even in friendships. And I finished this book in 1 week. Usually it takes me months to finish a single book, but this, I could not just put it down. It felt like reading a guide to every confusing conversation that I've had. So the book breaks down 4 personalities into colors: red, yellow, green, and blue. Each one represents a different way of thinking, deciding, and communicating. And once you understand them, you stop taking things personally. You start realizing, oh, they're not actually ignoring me. That's just the way how their brain works. So let's go through each color and I'll give you some real world examples along the way. Let's start with reds. So reds are action oriented. They like results, not small talk. They make quick decisions, speak directly, and usually they prefer not to sugarcoat things. At work, reds are your natural leaders, the ones saying, okay, what's the plan? What's the next step? At home, they might be the ones who are too impatient if things don't go as planned, like organizing a trip, and getting frustrated when people take too long to decide. In social settings, they are also the doers, the ones who'd rather lead than follow. But their strength, that decisiveness, can sometimes come off as intimidating or bossy to others. That's the shadow side of being a red. And I'll be honest, I'm probably about 50% red. I like movement. I learn by doing, and I'd rather test something and adjust than sit in analysis. But I've also learned that this part of me can be both a strength and a weakness. The same thing that makes me fast can also make me impatient. Some people need time to process, and when I forget that, I can bulldoze without meaning to. So these days, I continue to train myself to pause before acting, to give space for other perspectives, and remind myself that not every problem needs to be solved, at least not right away. Then there is yellow. These are your creative, high energy, let me make this fun people. They thrive on connection, ideas, and excitement. In a team, yellows are the life of a party. They brainstorm out loud, talk with their hands, and see possibilities everywhere. At home, they're the ones saying, let's go out or let's try something new. But here's a catch: they can get distracted easily. They get excited quickly and lose interest just as fast. So I used to work with someone who is a full-on yellow. I'd say she was probably about 80% yellow. She always had so many ideas, new projects, side hustles, big visions. And when you really listened to her, you'd start to believe that she can get all through those things. You'd start to believe it too. You'd see the possibilities, the potential. It was contagious. But after a few weeks or months, she would quietly drop those projects. And when you asked her about them, she just laugh it off and say, oh, I'm into something new now. So I've met a few people like that. And I say this with love. They bring so much light and creativity into a space, but they can really be very hard to keep up with. That's why I've learned that I probably want to work closely with someone who is a full-on yellow, because while I admire their spark, I also value follow through. And I could say I probably have about 10% yellow in me, which explains a lot. I do love finding ways to make things fun when it fits, whether it's turning a project into a creative challenge or adding little moments of humor into my work. I admire how yellows can be so carefree, spontaneous, and unbothered. I think there's something really freeing about that. But I also know myself. I do not want to be the life of the party. Just thinking about it already feels exhausting to me. I like the balance of lightness and calm, being playful without having to perform. And that's the part of yellow that I carry with me. The reminder that not everything has to be serious every single time, and that joy can also be a part of the process. Then we have the greens. The calm, reliable, steady ones. They're the people who don't love change. They like predictability, comfort, and harmony. At work, they're the quiet team members who keep things running smoothly behind the scenes. They don't really want to argue, they just really want peace. At home, they're also loyal, but they might want to avoid confrontation, even when something needs to be said. And in social situations, they are the easygoing ones who go with the flow until you push them too far. Then you'll be surprised how firmly they can stand their ground. Greens are the glue in many groups, but they struggle when they are surrounded by too much chaos or constant change. Finally, there's blue, the detail-oriented thinkers. They value logic, order, and structure. They like accuracy. I'll scratch that. They love accuracy. They are the ones proofreading your email or double checking your numbers. At work, blues are your planners, researchers, your let's not decide until we have all the data teammates. At home, they are super organized, maybe close to being a perfectionist. And in social settings, they are the ones listening more than talking. Sometimes they get labeled as too serious, but they just really care about doing things properly. If I had to put a number to it, I'm around 50% red and 40% blue. I love structure and systems. The planning, the organizing, the part where everything just makes sense. But at the same time, I also crave movement. I like seeing things happen, not just talking about them. It's the mix of strategy and action that shapes how I work and how I lead. I want things done, but I also want them done really well. Of course, the flip side to that is that sometimes I get stuck between overthinking and overdoing. One part of me wants to plan it all out, and the other part just wants to dive in and fix it later. So I used to see that as a flaw, but now I see it as a balance that I'm learning to manage. That combination, fast but intentional, is what keeps me grounded in business and in life. Reading his book helped me understand that most conflicts are not personal. A red boss might think a green employee is too slow. A blue partner might think that a yellow friend is too impulsive. A green family member might feel anxious around a red's intensity. But once you see people through these colors, you start noticing that we're all just wired differently. You stop expecting people to mirror you and you start meeting them where they're at. So in my personal understanding, this book is not about labeling people. It's about learning how to communicate with empathy and maybe a little more patience. There are actually so many examples and explanations in the book about how these colors show up in different settings, at work, at home, and even in social situations. It's interesting because you start to notice how people shift depending on where they are. And we all do. We adapt. For example, I might be a red and blue when it comes to business. Decisive, structured, always planning the next thing. But at home, I can easily turn into a blue-green, maybe quiet, reflective, the please don't make me decide what's for dinner version of myself. And in social settings, I can be a total green, calm, observant, happy to just listen, and enjoy being around people without needing to lead the conversation. So that alone made me realize that we are not just one color. We're a mix that changes depending on what part of us the moment calls for. So if you've ever wondered why some people just don't get you, or why collaborations sometimes feel harder than it should, this book might help you see things in color too. Now, I'm not saying that it will solve every problem, but it might soften how you see others and maybe even how you see yourself. So if you've read Surrounded by Idiots, I'd love to know which colors you resonate or you connected with the most. And if not, maybe this is your sign to give it a try, because understanding people does not mean changing them at all. It can also mean seeing the full picture and realizing that maybe, just maybe, we were never surrounded by idiots, just surrounded by different kinds of brilliance. So if you enjoy this kind of conversation, stories, reflections, lessons from books, and real life, tap to like and even subscribe. Until then, keep learning, stay curious, and be a little kinder to yourself and to the people around you. I'll see you in the next video. Explore and learn more about the freelancing world by downloading my free guide called the Freelance Starter Kit. It's available in the description box below. Make sure that your email address is active and please check both your inbox and spam folders after you're done signing up. You'll also see a link where you can submit your questions about freelancing so I can talk more about those in my upcoming videos. Thank you and see ya!